Well, I don't know. It might all be up for grabs.
Yeah, my opinion still is you cannot get rid of the deficit by cutting back. You have to increase revenue.
Everyone's listening.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. You can't just cut back and pay off a debt.
No.
You have to increase revenue.
Because what happens is you destroy whatever it is that is working.
5:30?
Already?
I'm ready.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the March 4th meeting of the Logan Municipal Council. We will have our opening ceremony this evening by Aaron Smith from Community Development.
So it brings you all out tonight, right? The opening ceremony. So
Yes.
Thank you for the invitation to do the opening ceremony. I got this opportunity about a year ago. I kind of made it quick and just went straight to play. This time I brought a little thought. So
Okay,
I'm bring a
good.
thought this time. I won't drone on though. So I want to bring an optimistic thought about local government and cities. And so this is from the book called New Localism: How Cities Can Thrive in the Age of Populism. And really it gets down to how and why cities can problem solve where other levels of government sometimes freeze up and stop working. And so I think in our current sort of shake-up, let's just say, federal levels and state levels, how can cities, and particularly Logan, thrive in these sort of circumstances? So this book kind of dives into that. But I really like this opening line in the first chapter. It says, cities and counties are solving problems because they can. It goes on, cities and localities can craft and deliver better solutions to hard challenges since they match problem solving to the way the world works, integrating holistic and entrepreneurial rather than compartmentalized and bureaucratic. A cultural affinity for public purpose and volunteerism is deeply rooted in localities. Cities are home to tens of thousands of mediating institutions, churches, community organizations, businesses, philanthropies that play a critical role in addressing the most difficult challenges facing families and neighborhoods. It goes on. A former New York Senator, Daniel Patrick Monahan, made clear throughout his long career the federal government should set a strong platform for families and community success. It cannot substitute for or take the place of community institutions. As he noted in his speech at the National League of Cities in 1985, federalism is not a managerial arrangement that the framers hit upon because the country was big and there was no telephones. Federalism was a fundamental expression of the American idea of covenant. To be sure, the issues that many cities face, from deep-seated poverty and aging infrastructure to legacy liabilities that crowd out needed items from public budgets, are difficult to overcome, but the most creative solutions will come from local initiatives in the places where schools are managed, jobs are created, budgets are designed, contracts are negotiated, and infrastructure choices are made. So that really just hit home with kind of where we're at as a city and making these local decisions, and I just want to share that as the thought.
Thank you.
All right, with that, I'll lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I forgot to mention at the very beginning that Ernesto Lopez is out of town, but he is in the air on the phone. So you will hear a voice from above every once in a while.
And we'll all look up when he's talking.
Yes, we'll all look up. So if Ernesto, if you need to say anything, just go, hello, hello, hello. Because.
Hello, everyone.
So, our first item of business this evening is the approval of the minutes from our last meeting and the approval of the agenda, acceptance of the minutes and approval of the agenda for this evening.
I would move acceptance of the agenda and the minutes.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Our 2025 regular meeting schedule is the first and third Tuesdays at 5:30 p.m. Our next meeting is March 18th. Now is an open mic opportunity for those in the audience who have any questions or comments for the mayor or Craig, because he's the mayor right now. And council, please step to the microphone, state your name, and take 3 minutes or less.
Yeah, we don't got we don't got any action items on the list tonight, so go pretty quick here. I missed the last meeting and missed that meeting with UDOT, yeah. That sounded pretty exciting though, so. I was just, last meeting, I guess it came up that the trees are going down on Candy Road. What the rumor is, and I was thinking that maybe we should start a photo op, get a photo op of this. Instead of, having shovels, those bright shovels like breaking ground or the mayor cutting scissors, we should get some people together, grab some chrome-plated chainsaws, go down there and get some photo ops of that. It's been protested pretty heavily. I know the reasons why behind that water line project, and that sucks. I don't know if you guys noticed, but yeah, 2017 is when we did the $20 million for the water line project. 2017 was also when Trump's tax cuts came through. And that was just like, man, private equity companies, real estate agencies, developers were just like, yeah, we are going to own America. That's what's happened a lot in Logan. These big private equity companies have come through and they have just started dismantling Logan. I think we need to start putting back some of our zoning stuff previous to 2017, back before, back in the old days, basically. Start reeling in and not letting these developers just do whatever they want, wherever they want, because they are literally destroying what makes Logan a gem for a lot of people in the city. It's gotten to a point where I'm just like, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? I love this place. I grew up here. I skated, on Main Street when I was 16 years old. Got in trouble here with the police. Yeah, I ran from the police a couple of times, but yeah, Logan was still fun. I think we need to start rolling back a lot of this zoning stuff, and we need to start reeling in these developers and these private equity companies, because they are not doing Logan any good. They're just taking advantage of it. So, anyway, I wanted to ask too also. I actually wanted to know, the mayor's not here, so I guess she can't give me the answer, but I was wondering who is buying Plaza 45? So, if somebody can get back to me on that, I'd really appreciate it.
Thanks, Josh.
Has the answer.
Gail Hansen, I live in Logan, I represent myself. I looked at your conflict of interest statements because they're right out there in public, and that's awesome. And one of my thoughts, just globally, since we've had this opportunity to think about bigger issues, is that one of the things that we have to do to limit fraud is to make it so that people can earn enough through honest work that they don't have to steal. I myself, because of family situations, found myself having committed fraud for Social Security. And you know what they did? They wrote me a letter and they said, you messed up and you owe us, and this is how you can pay us back. I'm guardian of my brother, and it was his Social Security, and I was just, doing what I could. And as far as development, we're doomed. We're going to have development. It's a beautiful place, and everybody wants to live here, and so they're going to come. I do think planning and zoning needs to be viciously rigid a lot of the time. But I think democracy is ugly and slow and the thing that works best.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Seeing no one, I'll bring it back to the council, and we'll move on to the board appointments proposed by the mayor. I'll let you do it, Greg.
All right, with two board appointments here, we request ratification for. First, the Line Power Advisory Board, Tyson Godfrey, I believe he's here. He has been serving as the chair of RESAT, there's Tyson. And then also to Connect Transit Board, Emily Fletcher. She's a recent USU grad and has been working in Cache County as assistant trails planner. So that's
Oh, excellent, excellent. Thanks for being here. I know that Tyson's doing something later, but thanks for being here.
Well, I would move ratification. Emily was my idea, so thank you, Emily. I thought it was really important that we have someone with like kind of that pedestrian impact too, as we look at transit throughout the area. So thank you for being willing to serve. And Tyson, obviously, you've been a great member of the community and of our board. So I heartily endorse ratifying these two young people.
I'll move to second that. And I'm also going to give them both a shout out because I think Emily is going to bring a great perspective to the Connect board. And Tyson has been, I've only known him for 18 months now on the Renewable Energy board, but he's been invaluable on that board, as you guys all know. And I think having him on Line Power and Renewable Energy will be, I think it'll be wonderful for the city. I think they're both great. So I'm excited to have you both. So I'll second it.
Perfect. Are there any other comments or concerns? We will do it we should do it by person, just so that, roll call, so that we hear from everyone. Ernesto?
Yes.
Aye? Is that correct?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jeannie? Mike?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
Jeannie? Aye. We'll move now to council business. The Planning Commission update. Last week at Planning Commission was a busy short-term rental week. We had 6 new short-term rentals approved.
Wow.
There's one on 466.5 West 300 North in the Ellis neighborhood. There is one at 176 West 1190 North in the MR12 zone in the Bridger neighborhood. There is one at 283 Meadows Circle in the Woodruff neighborhood. One at 346 South 600 West in the MR12 zone in the Woodruff neighborhood again. There's 670 West 600 South in the NR6 zone in the Woodruff neighborhood. And 395 East Center Street in the NR6 zone in the Wilson neighborhood. In addition to that, an office building was approved called D-Work-Q. So I guess it's supposed to be D-Work. It will be a 3-story office building out west of town, close to the entrance to the environmental services property. And they will have a large parking lot because they are a call center. And they're hoping to consolidate their business into one building. And again, another one was Hogan Estates subdivision. It's a 5-acre parcel with 28 single-family lots, 1,800 south, 1,600 west. It has come to the Planning Commission in the past, and there's a significant wetland on the property, a series of wetlands. And so there was a great deal of discussion about that, and they will have to accommodate their setbacks, because a little while ago, we put a large setback where things cannot be built within so many feet of a wetland, and so they have to comply with those ordinances. Anyway, that was Planning Commission. We'll move on now to board and committee reports, and I'll let you go first.
I get to go first? Awesome. Economic Development Committee did not meet last month. Historical Preservation Committee did meet, but I think we already discussed what was done there, so it's like I don't need to cover that again. Solid Waste did not meet. Light and Power met, and we had an amazing discussion of budget, which I'm sure you'd all be super excited about listening to. And also we talked about what Tyson's going to talk about, so I'm not going to steal your thunder. We won't even talk about that, but the budget was enthralling, so we'll put it that way. Golf Advisory Board met, and as I warned last time, there's going to be some rate increases, but they are for the yearly packages that are available that did not get increased last time. So we'll probably be seeing some of that as well too. And there were a couple other meetings, but I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
So exciting.
In the past month, I attended the Wilson Neighborhood Meeting, which was fairly well attended, and they had some discussion about the Wilson Neighborhood Plan. I encourage anyone who's concerned about zoning and how the city is growing to participate in the new general plan process. We are unwrapping that slowly but surely. We have an opportunity for people to do small group. There's a question and answer phase that they can participate in a small group. I know the Ellis neighborhood is very excited to be able to do that because they have elected block captains for most of the entire neighborhood. So they plan on participating, and we encourage everyone to participate as much as possible. I attended Airport Authority Board meeting. With Mike, I attended RESAB, our renewable energy group. I went to the UDOT open house, which many people attended. It was wonderfully attended. And I hope that people will go online and make comments and suggestions and criticism of what they saw. I attended CMPO, Metropolitan Planning, road planning, virtually, because I was in the car, and of course, Planning Commission. So that's my report.
The busy month.
We should give out the website address for participating in the general plan. They were starting to put it out like the flyers, so I saw that.
But I don't know whether it's active just yet.
It is. It is. Yeah.
Okay.
It is HLA.FYI /Logan General Plan, if anyone wants to participate in that survey.
And that also should be on our website, on the Logan City website.
LoganUtah.gov.
Yep.
It is right on the homepage of the website.
Yeah.
It's right on the front page.
So
Participate.
please do.
It's your opportunity to participate.
Absolutely. Well, this is an unusual meeting this evening. We have no action items.
Zero.
So,
It's all right.
all we're going to do are some workshop items. And our first workshop item is Russ Aquina. If you would step to the microphone, please, and just talk to us about fee increases.
I'd like to thank Mark Anderson for the introduction on the proposed fees.
I thought you were going to thank me
I
for
don't want to
letting
steal
you
your
go
thunder
first.
either. Yes.
What was that?
I thought you were going to thank me for letting you go first. You always end up having to go last.
I am very grateful for that. Even more grateful that you don't have any action items. And get right to business. The Parks and Recreation Department is proposing to, excuse me, increase selected fees for the Logan River Golf Course for this season. In the packet of information that was provided to you, should the proposed fees be approved, the department is proposing that they go into effect May 1st of this golf season. This is typical for us to allow time for patrons to perhaps either save up their money or plan ahead, or both, in regards to that. So I have some information to share with you that perhaps may also answer any questions that you might have. Certainly in regards to the fees themselves, and we're talking about the things as Mark Anderson had mentioned, our regular and senior season passes increasing, but also the fees that we have for the driving range bucket of range balls. The large bucket will remain the same price, but the medium and the introduction of a small bucket is proposed in this information. We're also looking at increasing the power cart. This is the golf cart fees, both for 9 holes and 18 holes, as well as the green fees for 9 holes and 18 holes. That would be for adults, and then we also are proposing to increase the green fees for seniors, as well as our punch passes, the regular punch pass and the senior punch pass. In addition to the golf fees, we're also proposing to increase the rental rate for the tournament room, which has a half-day fee and a full-day fee. We also have attached to those rental fees a cleaning fee, not a deposit, but a cleaning fee if the organizer is using an outside caterer other than one that we're contracted with. And then we're also including a table linen fee of $10 per table, depending on how many tables the event organizer is using. With regards to the fees, this is to help us offset our direct costs to the golf course operation. And those direct costs include our part-time labor, supplies for services that we use, including the replacement of range balls. We had an event last fall and had organized a number of volunteers to help us pick range balls off of the driving range. And my lot happened to be in the side in the pucker brush, which I don't know how I got that assignment. But once I got into it, I realized why there weren't more people with me. But I could not believe how many golf balls are in places like that. We do have plans for doing improvements to the driving range, but that also figures in to our fees because we're trying to establish a capital plan to make improvements to these different revenue centers that make up the golf course's budget. In fact, the driving range is one of the driving factors, if you will, in terms of revenue. And so making sure that we can retrieve, clean, and put back into play things like range balls is really critical to the golf course. And other things too, like getting the windows cleaned in the pro shop and care for the building and so many other things, including replacement parts for course equipment. We're a little concerned about what we're all reading about just in terms of the replacement cost of things that are made out of metal and come from other countries that are manufactured, and we're the beneficiaries of that manufacturing. But it worries us a little bit in the long term, or even in the midterm, if you will, the cost of replacing things like mowers and mower decks and other pieces of equipment. So we're paying attention to that as things go on. We're already seeing an increase in cost in irrigation replacement parts. So the plastic that is manufactured for the systems that we use and many others use, we've already seen a jump in cost in that. So along with that, in the upcoming fiscal year budget, we'll be presenting our power cart lease renewal. In 2026, we will end the current cart lease that we're on, which started in 2022 as a 4-year lease. And so before next fiscal year that budget ends, we'll be into the conversion, if you will, of a new lease. And so what we're doing now in presenting these numbers before you is also for purposes of helping us build that leased fund up, because it'll come in the next fiscal year. Okay. And then the last thing I'll just say in terms of why the fees is that we're also trying to build our capital fund. We have items like the improvements to the driving range to address. We're going to continue to replace cart paths with capital that we develop out of the golf course budget. That's really been important to us, as well as down the road, the big ticket item for the golf course is replacing the irrigation system. The system that's in the ground right now is 22 years old. It was the same system when the golf course opened in 1992. And we're starting to see issues with that, and we'll need to address it. Just a couple other questions in case you might have them. I took the opportunity to develop some of those in case they may be on your mind. So when were the fees increased last? The last time this was done was in 2023. It wasn't all fees, but that was the last time I was before the city council. What do the proposed fees represent in terms of projected revenues for the 25-26 season? So if approved, conservatively speaking, and if all things were equal, meaning levels were the same in all categories for the last 2 years, we would conservatively project somewhere between 100 and 120,000 from these fee increases to go back into the budget. When is the golf course planning to open to the public? We're talking about dates now. They were looking at possibly March 9th or March 15th. That's a Saturday. It's next Saturday. But we're watching the weather forecast for March 13th, which is calling for snow and rain. So we'll see. We're close, but not sure the pinpoint date yet. Have you secured an endorsement from the golf board? We have. We've reached out to the golf advisory board, and they have responded to us in the affirmative. Other event facilities. So normally what we do is we will provide for you a comparison of other courses with their fees so that we can illustrate for you where we're at and where we're going in relation to other courses. As far as event facilities go, so these are places that hold events and things of that sort, it's taken me a little bit more time. Many of these facilities, some of which are just here in Logan, it's kind of difficult to match apples to apples, if you will. And so we're trying to find a right mix, and we're working on that. Should that information be available, we'll provide that to you before the public hearing in 2 weeks. With that, I'll take any questions.
So as I look at the fee structure, I see a mismatch between the first page and the second page. You've got senior green fees listed at 17 on the first page and at 18 on the second page. And the 18 holes is 36 on the second page and 34 on the first. So which fees are we looking at?
All right. And you were referring to senior fees, is that correct?
Correct, yes,
The
so
green
they're
fees.
listed, there's two different numbers. On one, it's 17 and 34, and the other, it's 18 and 36.
For the proposed for Logan.
Yeah, so the proposed on the bottom page, that's not on the actual voting sheet, but just the attachment has a different fee rate. So I didn't know if that had been a recommendation from the golf board to lower it to 17 from the 18 that's on the proposed worksheet.
It's just in the comparisons. So-
Yeah, I think, just to be clear with the golf board, if there is something that we missed in or transposing the information for them, we'll want to make sure that they get what was recommended. What was recommended for seniors for 9-hole and 18-hole, 9-hole was proposed to go to 17, and 18 holes is proposed to go to 34.
Okay, so on that golf fee comparison sheet, those are not what were then ultimately those were proposed, but that's not what you're recommending. Just to make sure I'm looking at this right.
Yeah.
So
I'm
we're
sure
looking
we
at 17 and 34.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll clean that up. We'll make that known with the golf board just to make sure that perhaps what you're seeing is what they saw as well. And then for the next meeting, we'll have the correction for the public hearing.
Okay, thanks.
So can you talk about, sorry. Can you talk about why, I mean, most of these are relatively moderate increases, but there's quite a substantial increase in the cost of using the tournament room.
Yeah, for the tournament room, there's actually more effort that we provide in order to prepare the room for another reservation. And generally what we see with the reservations is it's not that they typically will occur during, let's say, an evenly dispersed period of time in the season. It ramps up really heavy during the holidays, and then we'll get some use during the golf season, but particularly during the holidays it does. So what happens with that is we're low in staff at that time of year because it's the holidays. And so the cost involved in terms of getting that tournament room cleaned up and presentable for the next reservation, and sometimes it's the very next night or day.
I know that you have a cleaning fee. I'm just talking about the rent.
Yes, the cost associated with that is the reason why we want to increase that. And as I said, in terms of making the comparisons with other event centers, I don't know where they fall. I took a rough look at it today, but I couldn't really tell. There were some that were $3,000 to $3,500, depending on what you wanted to use it for. So I'm not getting a good comparison. What we're proposing to do based on the numbers you're seeing here is based on our costs, our time involved in getting that room ready for the next reservation.
I've actually asked the golf course to triple, quadruple that fee. The problem is the amount of money we make versus how much effort we're expending is huge, and wear and tear on the facility. Plus, we're in the business of providing a golf recreational activity, not a wedding venue.
Yeah, the only thing is, it's probably one of the smaller, nicer venues around.
It is. And it's fantastic. It's just, that's not
So these are reflective of actual costs. It's like, all of a sudden, it's twice as much.
Yeah, I wish we'd double it again, just because that's not what we want to do as a city.
Rich, we do not want it to sit empty either.
Well, yeah.
I mean, you won't hear me arguing this very often, but I wouldn't mind it, because it's just not what we're trying to do.
The other perspective of it, Jeannie, is that hindsight, we should have put it up higher in the beginning if we knew that we were going to run into these spikes in use and the amount of effort needed. So this is kind of some catch-up for us in order to match up where the costs are. I mean, for instance, our utilities for the clubhouse spikes, and we know it's a contributing factor based on the rentals. But even with our upcoming budget review with the council, utilities is a concern, and in particular for the golf courses during this time of year.
Okay.
I had a short meeting with Rich about this because I hate.
Short one?
It was short. It was pretty short. Because I hate fee increases.
And he went on against fee increases.
I know. Have you explored the possibility of weekend versus weekday rates at the golf course?
Years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, years ago we had. I mean, there was a time too when we were looking at resident and non-resident distinctions or rate fees. But there's other courses that do it by time of day. And to say that we would move ahead with it, I'd really want that conversation from the board in terms of how they see that. But we have in the past.
I'm just wondering if it might be a possibility to allow some of the green fees to still stay closer to where they are, and then, those peak times possibly charge more. I don't know if it's been explored or if there's merit in exploring it more.
We had so many conversations about making sure the golf course was self-sustaining.
Right.
That's, I think, to me, that's an important priority, so I appreciate Russ's
And I-
comments
yeah.
about this is why we're raising fees to cover these
Because
expenses.
it wasn't long ago that the golf course was not self-sustaining, so for them.
Well, in my meeting with Rich, according to Rich, it's still barely not self-sustaining. Which is why I won't fight. I won't fight.
It's been
Operationally, we're doing well. Capital-wise, we're not. And there's the overhead, like payroll expense and those types of things, it's never covered. But it's getting closer.
It's getting closer, yeah. No, I'm not coming out opposing these. I was just curious if that had been explored recently at all.
It's in a better position today than it was prior to COVID.
Sure.
COVID's kind of been the marker for the course in terms of its numbers. Yeah, I mean, we'd love to be even higher and be
I think
totally
COVID-
self-sustaining, but
COVID and a big meeting we had.
yes. Yeah, in this room.
Yes. To talk about it. Anybody else? Ernesto, do you have any comments, questions?
No comments.
Thank you. If there's nothing else, thank you.
Okay, I'll make those corrections, Amy, thanks.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, again, I didn't know if the second document was just a working document and you landed on the 17 and 34. That's what I'm presuming, is that you landed on the 1734, but if that's different, it would be good to know.
Okay.
Rich, you're next.
Several items to consider. The first is a request to appropriate $800,000 of connection fee revenue to be used toward connection fee expenses. We budget relatively low, kind of a historical amount for electrical connections. However, the last couple of years have been a lot higher than that. So, and I'm comfortable with the way we budget. It's just we need to come in if we have a bigger year and request that we appropriate these funds back toward those expenses of connecting new meters, new transformers, those types of things.
Is this new, or is this when they had the big outage on the west side?
No, this is for new development, new commercial development mostly this past year.
Okay.
Next is a request to appropriate $37,217 toward the North Logan fire contract. These are additional funds from North Logan. The contract was set at a certain amount, however, our costs have exceeded it. The fire department has requested a reimbursement from North Logan, and they have agreed that it's appropriate. So this is for the fiscal year 25 year, additional $37,217. Next, the request appropriate $367,396 for wildland reimbursements toward our fire budget. Since our fire department is in two pieces, one is the fire department in the general fund, the other is the EMS fund. Even though they're all firefighters, many of them are paramedics. So the next item is the EMS portion, $28,918 wildland reimbursements for EMS budgets. A request to appropriate $62,698. This is in reality a movement of the budget that was originally placed in the general fund, however, requesting to put this in the golf course budget to be used toward the improvements at the range that Russ talked about, at least a portion of them. So it's not increasing the budget, it's decreasing the budget in the general fund, increasing the budget in the golf course fund.
So this is the pop split that we used to allocate almost entirely to fireworks?
Fireworks was a main usage of those funds.
And then it's a population split that we get on sales tax?
It is on the RAPS portion of sales tax, that's correct, that the
Okay.
county allocates based on population. The city can use it for any purpose that qualifies. The golf course improvements are one.
Okay, thank you.
Next is request to appropriate $4,905 ARFF standbys at the airport. Request to use those toward training for the same purpose. And lastly, a request to appropriate $337 for an EMS grant for medical training for our 911 operators.
What is ARFF?
Aircraft Rescue and Firefighting.
Thank you.
There's a big ARF truck out of the
There's a
airport.
ARF truck.
And it sprays foam, but we got the wrong foam, and so now we gotta get different foam. Just more than you needed to know.
Probably.
Based on the issues with flights in our nation over the last few weeks, it's good to know that we've got phone
Yeah, well, we're on the right foam.
phone monitors.
Yeah.
That make sure that's right.
You got the right phone. Anybody, any questions? Ernesto, any questions?
No questions.
Anybody else?
No questions.
Okay.
Thank you, Rich.
Item C on our agenda is a presentation of the future power needs and resources for Logan City. I will turn the time over to Tyson and Nathaniel.
I hope Tyson brought his spreadsheet.
Yeah, maybe something else.
That'll work.
Okay, so we both met on Friday and decided to avoid a bunch of overlap between both of us. We're just going to present together.
That worked great.
So we'll be switching back and forth and kind of combined our slides in one presentation. So we'll do that way.
For the public watching, can you guys each introduce yourselves? Is that
We are
okay?
getting there.
Folks,
But
it's on the next slide.
Oh, is that okay? Sorry.
I'll shut up. Mike always tries to go to the next slide.
You guys would move quicker. Come on.
yeah, so just real quick, we'll walk through all these different topics as we go through the presentation. Like I said, we'll be switching back and forth as we jump between both of us. So I'm Tyson Godfrey. I'm the current chair of RESAB and recent addition to the Power Board. So my background is in mechanical and systems engineering, specifically a lot of systems modeling, life cycle analysis type stuff, and then currently work for the Air Force doing systems engineering. So where I get into power and modeling future needs and all that good stuff.
I'm Nathaniel Weidler. I am the chair of the Logan City Lights and Power Advisory Board. Sorry, it's a mouthful. And like officially welcome Tyson onto the board. It's going to be a great addition. I have a PhD in electrical engineering. It's not specifically in power engineering, but I certainly have the background to understand the power grid and the systems and those types of things. I work at the Space Dynamics Lab as an electrical engineer, and I've really enjoyed the time I've been spending on the power board for the last 4 years. Sorry, we didn't have a great rehearsal, but.
I may have been working on the presentation up until like 5 minutes before the meeting. So basic challenge we're going to be talking about, this has obviously been a discussion for the past several months, is acquiring additional capacity to meet the future needs of Logan City. So we're going to go over, kind of summarize a few of the past discussions on different options, present one new option that we've talked with a few council members about, and Mark and Light and Power. And then really our big purpose here is just to give you guys information. Hopefully from that you can better formulate what other questions or information you need, and we can help provide that.
And one thing that I think, so with my experience on the Light and Power Advisory Board and my knowledge of public power, I believe that it is very important for public power to make known decisions for the future. You know, it is up to us to provide power for our customers. It is best done when we can provide a known rate at which that power will be provided to them. So I feel like it's really important that we are proactive, that we have decisions that need to be made. You have decisions that need to be made, and I certainly don't envy those decisions because I think they're very difficult decisions. Tyson and I have gotten to know each other a little bit over the last couple of days, and I hope you don't see this as somebody coming from the renewable board versus someone coming from the power board. You'll see through the presentation that I think that we align more than we differ on the needs, and obviously Tyson can weigh in on that. I think that the approach of risk tolerance is probably a little bit different between us. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I think that's good.
Okay.
Okay, so I just wanted to throw this up real quick. RESA has been working on some draft guiding principles on making decisions when it comes to power and complex decisions. So expect more of this to come in the future. Thanks to Patrick for helping start this initiative, but it really is, I think, beneficial if we all have some guiding principles and frameworks that help us work through decisions and have those common goals. And like I said, even though we may differ in approaches or risk tolerance or priorities, hopefully if we have those same guiding principles can help us. So we'll work on developing these with council and with Power Board and RESA. Okay, so a little bit of education before we get into the meat of the presentation, just because I know you've probably heard about the day-ahead market, new requirements that are coming as part of being required to join it. It's interesting. It's an optional market to join unless you're part of Pacific Corp's transmission area, and then you have to join because they're joining. So for us, it's a requirement, and really what the day-ahead market is it's widening the existing California day-ahead market to the greater Western United States area. And the goal is to provide a bigger area to balance and optimize resources. In theory, there's a lot of potential to lower cost and other benefits, but also it's complicated, challenges in implementing it. So the big thing that will come up in several of the slides that we talk about is capacity requirements. So I just wanted to make sure we all had a good understanding of what that was going into this, because it's not the easiest topic to wrap your mind around. So the basic the basic idea behind capacity requirements is that in order to participate in the day-ahead market, they want everyone to come to the market with enough resources that they could cover their needs if those resources were called upon. So basically, they don't want anyone showing up to the potluck without bringing their own dish. They don't want freeloaders.
That was a pretty good analogy.
So
That sounds like you gotta bring 15% more cookies that you're going to consume.
yeah, some people bring better things than others, but the goal is that they want everyone to come. And if you don't, there's penalties and forced purchase of power that's not ideal. So next one.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So Pacific Core owns the transmission lines
Yep.
from which we get the power that we turn around and sell to our customers.
Yep.
So even though we are our own utility, we are beholden to Pacific Core to get the power to us.
Yes, as the grid operator.
Okay, and so are we responsible for this EDAM, or is Pacific Core responsible for it?
Ultimately, it'll be us for our power needs. That will flow through Pacific Corp, but yeah, ultimately it's our responsibility to meet the requirements, and then we'll also have the benefits of being able to participate in that market.
Right, and just to be clear, so Logan City owns our transmission lines inside the city. So this is, our generation, a lot of our generation is outside. And in order to get that, we have to play the game that Pacific Corp, you know, they make the rules.
What are you going to say?
We bake the cookies and Pacific Corp delivers them. So.
Exactly.
No.
Pacific Core is like Uber Eats, is what you're telling us?
Okay.
Even if we own the restaurant.
Oh, my goodness.
They're going to charge you a lot of money for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And they do. You pay a premium for that Uber Eats.
Yeah, and we do generate some of our own electricity.
Yes.
So,
Yep.
okay.
So I'll try to keep this simple. So this is a graph that shows how a capacity auction works. So every day, the day ahead, all the different load-serving entities, so utilities basically, in this day-ahead market will come and they'll bid in the resources to the market. So they'll say, I have these 5 power plants and I'm willing to run this one for $20 a megawatt hour. This one's really expensive, so I don't want to run it unless I get $100 a megawatt hour. So you bid in all your resources. And then you also bid how much power you want to buy from the market. So in this example, it's showing a bunch of resources that were bid into the market. They'll stack them from the cheapest, most efficient to the most expensive. And then that will give you, amounts of power available at those prices. And in this example, it's saying that the market as a whole is saying we want 550 megawatts of power on this day. And so they'll go figure that price and say, okay, the bid that lines up with 550 megawatts of power, in this case, is $150 per megawatt hour. And so that will set the market price for everyone that bid in resources. So the guy that bid in $30 for his wind turbine will get $150. So everyone gets the market price for their resources. And everyone pays the market price for the power they buy during that time.
Yeah, and at the same time, and then you're required to provide that resource to the market if you are within the pool that at a lower rate.
So in this example, that coal plant that was above, they would not be required to run at that time, even though they bid into the market. So if you don't want to run your power plant, you bid it in really expensive and likely you won't be required to run it. But if power gets expensive enough, they'll call on you and say, okay, you have to run your resource because yours was selected.
Yeah, so we could bid our local generation. We could say, you'll have to pay us $500 a megawatt hour to run this. And then we won't have to run it unless the price gets high, and then we have no choice but to run it.
Yeah. But then we get paid extra more.
Yeah, exactly. And then,
We get paid
Yeah, so if
it's
you,
our generation for our use.
but when you're participating in the market, you get paid to run your resource from the market, and then you pay for the market. So if you bid in your resource, you can actually make money in this scenario, or Worst case, you have to run your resource, and it's kind of a wash even on buying and selling power in the market. So the reason that this is important is that the complexities of this come down to you have to bring enough power to start with, but you won't necessarily be required to run those resources you bring to the market, only if they're selected at the prices you bid in. So you have to show up with all of the,
So
all
you-
the cards, but you won't necessarily be required to use your resource if it's not the most effective price.
So we've shown up with all of those different prices, right? Do they conglomerate, or are they?
So they basically stack them up. So they'll add how many megawatts do we have at this price, and then they'll go to the next price, and then they'll add that until they get enough megawatts.
Yeah, so you see like about 550 is the demand, and so this is a stack up. If it's 50 megawatts from this wind turbine, another 50 megawatts from this wind turbine, 100 from this natural gas, you stack them until you reach the demand from the entire system.
But then you charge it all at 150?
Yep,
So we pay 150 for every megawatt.
yep. But we would also get paid for.
But if we have generation that only costs us $30 and we were selling that on top of our needs,
Yep.
we would sell it for an additional 120 if it was 30.
Yep.
Is that
So
correct?
the reason this is important is we have resources that aren't necessarily the most efficient to run. So like our peaker facilities. We can bid them into the market to cover our capacity requirement, but most days, they won't be selected to actually run. We'll just be buying market power at whatever the price is that day, which in this case it's high, but a lot of times a day it's only cheaper, $20 or $30 a megawatt. So let's go to the next one. So that's just a summary of what I just talked about. There's potential lower cost, there's reliability because their algorithm and their bidding system selects the most efficient and cheapest units every day. And then
So, can I ask a tangential question a little
Yeah.
bit? This only applies to power that we would be buying that day on the market. If we purchase like what's the right term here? Like a seasonal or an annual block power purchase, this would not apply to that.
No, this is
Okay.
specifically for day-ahead purchases.
For what we would currently be purchasing day output, now we might be purchasing.
Yeah, day that you plan ahead of time. So instead of having to react the day something's happening, you can plan and make all your purchases the day ahead of time. So it just is a more efficient process than trying to manage it.
Sure, but it wouldn't apply to our block purchases.
No, that would just be-
or our power purchase contracts. Or
And this is just the power that you're going to the market for, right? So this isn't setting the cost of all the power that we're going to. Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
So if you had no power, you would be subject to this 100%?
Yeah, if you had no power, you would pay
no power purchase contracts, no.
Right.
Where was?
No steady
Yeah.
output or steady generation.
What percentage of our power do we purchase?
Uchi's in the back.
Say, where's Yuchi? Sorry. Can I ask you that question, Yuchi? What percentage of our power do we purchase outside of block purchases or power purchase agreements?
I don't know the question, sorry. What's the question?
Outside of like our power purchase agreements and our block purchases, how much of our power are we purchasing on like the daily market and would be subject to this EDAM?
Okay, it really depends. If we have a sufficient baseload power, we're buying a lot less from pool. Currently, USU is down, let's see, high load hours in pool, we're buying about 10 megawatt.
10 megawatt?
10 megawatt during the daytime. That is also on purpose because of pool price. Right now, we're not in this EDAM yet. It's going to implement next year. But right now, the market price is a lot less during the solar hours, say from hour 14 to 17. And for those hours, we purposely do not subscribe our Hunter power, which is operated at about, fuel costs at about $40. And if we see $25 offering in the market, we're not generating, so we expose 10 megawatt during the day to buy those cheaper power.
So I'm going to repeat you just so Ernesto can hear you here, and also so I make sure I understand. But on a typical day, during normal hours, you purchase roughly 10 megawatts.
No, this varies. I mean,
Okay.
this varies season by season, and then it depends on the resource available as well. Currently, we almost do not call back any IPP resources, and we have USU outages, and so we could use that.
Okay.
Hunter could totally cover the shortage. Hunter is 12 to 13 megawatt. And we're on purpose not generating, but buying cheaper one from the market. But in summertime, it will be different. The price will be different, and then the exposure will be different. We'll try to minimize the summer exposure when the price is high.
Yep.
Thank
So again, yeah, real quick to summarize on this slide.
Sorry.
This is showing actual Logan City planned capacity. So again, capacity is how much you're potentially able to generate. It doesn't have anything to do with how much power. It doesn't mean that you're not going to supply customers power. It's, do you have enough to participate in the market? And so an important aspect here is that there are mechanisms to be able to basically have a contract with another entity to cover that capacity for you. So basically you sign a contract with them and they agree to submit power onto the market on your behalf. But they're the ones that actually get paid for that power. But you have to pay them to provide that capacity requirement for you. So currently, based off of kind of an average projected shortfall of capacity, if we were to go out and buy this power capacity from a third party, it would cost $3 to $8 million per year. And once we paid them that, then we could participate in the market, buy market power at whatever the going rate is with no penalty.
Yeah, and so those are not block purchases. That's just saying this is giving us enough power to participate in the market, and then we would also have to buy the power that we needed. So if we're paying someone else to bake the cookies and bring them on our behalf, but we don't even get to eat them, then we have to go and pay for them again.
Yeah, but I think it's just important that when we're talking about being short capacity, it's not that there's going to be blackouts, it's that we would have to pay somewhere in the range of $3 to $8 million per year to cover that capacity requirement.
Right, which I think I would like to avoid that if we can.
Okay. So let's go back to that one.
I think that's where we're at, right?
Yep.
Okay, so Tyson, so we see it as there's two really big challenges here. We have these new EDAM requirements that we need to bring sufficient resources to the market. Otherwise, it's going to be big penalties for us, like Tyson just described. Our other one is that we're already a little bit short, and these are we're going to be more short here in a couple of years. So we've got Sunnyside, which is a coal-fired plant, and Hunter, which is a coal-fired plant. They are retiring in 2028 and 2032, as you can see, and they represent 32% of our base load power right now. So if that makes me feel uneasy, I hope you can understand why. I think we've had discussions about baseload power and why that's really important. So if you have any questions about that, you can ask, but I think you understand the difference between baseload and heat. Baseload runs all the time, 24 hours a day. And then
So that 32% is the combination of Sunnyside and Hunter, or just Hunter alone?
Sorry, it's both of these. So it's the 18 megawatts. So it's 32% of 56 megawatts.
Okay.
Yep. And then we also wanted to point out that this is what our current resource mix looks like. And these accounting methods that we use are strict accounting, which means that makes it look, this is the worst picture that you can give for our percentage of renewables.
Basically, we're not counting excess renewables we sell to the market, and we're not counting any renewables that may be in market power we're buying.
Right.
We're only counting stuff that are our resources that we directly consume.
Yeah, and so, this is, Tyson and I have been talking about some of these things, right? I truly want to give you, we will explain the picture that we're giving you. If you want to see a different picture, there's a million different pictures that could be painted with the same data, right? And so this is strict accounting. This is the worst it could look for our renewables. And, you know, almost a quarter of them. It's not terrible. Okay, so this is, I just wanted to highlight, these are the renewable projects that we are currently participating in. We have a couple of decent-sized solar projects. Pleasant Valley Wind. VEO is a heat recovery unit, so it's taking recycled heat that was just going to be gone and creating power with it. The Colorado River Storage Project. So the reality of this is these are what we're subscribed for, and this is summer versus winter numbers. Because of the low water levels, we've been getting about 60% typically. So the real numbers we're getting from here are about 8 and 12 megawatts respectively. This, we just barely signed a new 20-year agreement here, so that's really great. We have our Logan Hydro. That, again, has, you know, there's been some difficulties. They've cleaned out the dam. So 4 megawatts is the capacity. In the first few months, between late spring and summer, we've been seeing about 3 megawatts out of that, and now it's like 1.5 megawatts, so pretty, yeah. And then also, this is just a slide I wanted to present because I want you to understand that we are certainly exploring all the possibilities that we can in renewables. I hope you know that I would greatly prefer 100% renewables, 100% carbon-free. I think that would be the ideal mix. I mean, I know the last time Ernesto, asked what the ideal mix is. I truly think that's the ideal mix. I think the reality is that we don't have that available to us to meet all of our needs. And so we're doing the best we can. This is a new wind project that is that looks like it will go through in the next couple of years. I've highlighted these in yellow because I was talking to UMs. They just got an update on Friday on both of these projects, where Fremont Solar in particular was looking like it wasn't going to happen, but something queued up in the transmission queue, and they were able to move that up a couple of years. So, so this project.
Can I ask a question on these numbers?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
The project type size.
Yeah, that's Logan subscribed.
That's what we're planning to subscribe for. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
We're planning on subscribing.
Can
you repeat that?
The project type size is what Logan is subscribing for on each of these projects.
Okay, so the entire project is not just 3 megawatts.
Correct.
Right,
Yes.
yeah. Thanks for that clarification. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then so these two projects. Oh, okay. And I also wanted to point out some of these projects UAMPS has brought to us. You know, UAMPS tries to get all the renewable projects that they can. They do a really good job on that. Some of these that we go and find maybe with another city or two in UAMPS to do exploratory to see if that makes sense. These two in orange. They're actually real power plants that are probably going to happen. And this is a mistake here. The 3.6 megawatts and the 2 megawatts, those are total project size. I apologize, a lot of these slides I put together really quickly late at night, so I'll point out when I see errors. These are orange because honestly we're probably not going to participate because we would only be able to get a tiny fraction, 0.2 megawatt hours or 200 kilowatt hours from each project.
It's not worth the commitment.
Yeah, exactly. And then these are real projects that we were very hopeful for, and just because of things beyond our control, sometimes transmission, sometimes, so the CERC geothermal in particular, we thought this was going to be a really great project, a decent size, and all of a sudden they stopped communicating. Mark talked about it at the last meeting. We think probably California way outbid us, and they're not even interested in talking to us anymore. And so we want the most renewables we can. My ideal would be geothermal. If we could get a bunch of geothermal plants, I would love to do that. It's just, like I said at the beginning, I think that we need to not just hope for things, but make proactive decisions to bring power to the customers. And unfortunately, we take every opportunity that we can in the renewables. The reality is that we don't have all the options, so we don't hold the cards there.
Okay, so we already talked this one. Just an example of what a day looks like on resource stack up without adding any more resources. So it just all that light green at the top would be market purchases that we would need to make, because you can see that orangish color that's the biggest chunk.
Yeah.
That's the new peaker facility that we signed up for. So that's ramping it up to full capacity, and then about that.
Oh, like golden oranges?
Yeah, golden orange, yeah. So you're running that peak capacity a lot, and you're making market purchases to fill in the gap.
And what I would like to see personally, right? And this is for you to decide, really. I would love to see that filled, so that we're not at the mercy of the market.
Well, this is my birthday, so I understand there's always a huge celebration that draws a lot of power. So maybe we should look at like Mark's birthday.
Not as much.
We'll celebrate.
So I picked July 3rd because it's the highest power use day of the year.
I know.
Well, that's why.
I know. Okay, so I think all of that leads into the proposal that we would like to encourage council and city to seriously consider is to invest in a larger scale local solar and battery storage project. So some of the big reasons for doing this is there's always going to be challenges with a large project, but it puts those challenges within the control of Logan City. It makes it so that transmission, third-party company finances, all of these other issues that we've had being outbid by California aren't a concern. There's other concerns we'll talk about, but it puts the biggest challenges we've been facing within our control so that we could actually make a project happen much sooner rather than later. Other benefits to a project like this is that price stability. So there's larger upfront costs that you would have to bond and pay out over a certain amount of years. But once you purchase that equipment, there's no variable fuel cost. Those power costs are locked in no matter what inflation, fuel costs, natural gas prices, no matter what any of it does, you've locked in that cost up front. Obviously, community benefits by having local jobs, local companies, local people involved in this project. Zero emissions, obviously there are emissions from manufacturing the solar panels over the whole life cycle. That's pretty minimal. But here in the valley, no emissions from this project. So some of the issues we'll talk about that will need to be addressed is you do have to be able to finance that cost up front, whether it's a bond or some other mechanism. There are options like power purchase agreements if you can get third-party companies to do that, but that does add cost to those projects. And then getting the land for it. We've talked about several potential options. Each one of them kind of have their own challenges and things that'll have to be worked through. And then there will be some grid upgrades required to integrate that into our local grid. So.
And then just for, sorry, I just went back a slide. So our solar, we could expect decent, into 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock? I'm not sure with the single axis.
Single axis pushes it later till like 6, 7.
Okay, so you could get into here, right? Which would be great.
For summer,
yeah, right, into summer. Yeah, and there would be a big change between summer and winter. But just looking at it, it definitely could help with this. Certainly not the later hours where we have a shortfall, right?
Yep.
Which hopefully the battery can help extend that.
Yep, right. So that's the idea. Yeah. So the proposal, some of you have seen, I've put together a model that can run through a lot of scenarios that will let you put in different amounts of different resources, and it will will then go and select the best resources that you have available to run every hour of the day for the whole year. And so it prioritizes solar first and then storage. If there's not enough, then it'll turn on the natural gas peaker plant. If there's not enough, then it'll start doing market purchases. If the market's really cheap, it'll turn off the natural gas plant and just use the market. So it takes all of that into consideration. It also will look at the cost of that solar over time. So you can see here the kind of the sweet spot where you're maximizing your benefit for the next 10 years is somewhere in the scope of 20 to 30 megawatts. All of that could be here local, or if some of these other projects work out, there are benefits to having it distributed in different locations so that, if it's bad weather here, it's probably not bad weather in southern Utah.
Yeah, I'll just a quick example. In December, Steel Solar, which we have 5 megawatts for, there were a couple weeks in a row that we got 1 megawatt from it. And so that's what Tyson's talking about, is just the
diversification.
Yeah.
So if that Fremont Solar goes through and you can do 20 here and 10 there, that's great. It still works if you put all 30 here, but yeah, benefits there. So you can see cost data that we have for these systems. It includes everything. There's a couple things that have more questions as far as like land specifically, but as far as the solar equipment, for 30 megawatts, it would be an upfront cost of $33 million that you would then have to do a bond on, and the 4-hour battery storage deal with that would be around $25 million.
Yeah. And then one thing we talked about was that with the battery storage, if the cost is really inexpensive through the market, we can charge our batteries off the market.
Yep, and that's...
I love that idea. I thought it was amazing.
So these prices on the left here, this is the average cost per megawatt hour for the solar alone, the storage alone, and then combined. And so those prices are not taking into account other things you can do with the battery, like market arbitrage. So this is just strictly using the solar and the battery as a means of producing electricity. So you can see that obviously tax credits, some questions around them right now, but even without the tax credit, the combined solar and storage cost per megawatt hour is 92, which if you compare that to the natural gas peaker plant that we just signed up for, it was 93 to 167. So it's on the lower end of that facility that we signed up for. So
we don't get tax credits?
So currently under the IRA as it exists today, if you are a non-taxable entity such as a municipal utility, you can get a direct payment for the equivalent of the tax credit towards the project.
Okay.
Currently, there's challenges actually getting that paid.
We got some requests and we've been denied thus far. But it was a program.
Yeah, it's
a program.
It's still in the laws today.
But maybe tomorrow.
You'll see on some of the assumptions in the future numbers that I run that I assume a 20% tax credit, because there are, if you run it through the right commercial company, they can claim part of the credit and pass part of it on through you, and you get a reduced amount. So even if the direct pay doesn't work out, there are still ways to get part of the tax credit if it continues on. Like I said, even without the tax credit, this project is still feasible.
It's more feasible with the tax credit.
Way more feasible with the tax credit.
And just to be clear, right, we're not, and so it's in some of the models, it depends on the day how things work, but remember that if you use the solar electricity, into our grid, it's obviously not going into the batteries. Right.
They're exclusive.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're drawing it off the batteries, it's not charged.
So you do have to plan when you're charging that battery and when it's charging that power is not available. But that's all figured and calculated into the numbers.
Yeah.
So the 92 is just for the battery and the solar array costs together.
Yep. So it's basically assuming that instead of having the solar output all 30 megawatts, it'll output something like 20 onto the grid. The other 10 will be used to charge the battery, and the solar tapers off, the battery fills into the nighttime hours. And the average cost of that power is $92 for the direct solar and also the portion that goes through the battery.
And that does not include land purchase and preparation and substation cost, correct?
So that,
Those are fixed costs.
it does include $6 million for a substation, and
Oh, it
it
does?
includes
Okay.
$2 million for land cost, which is a huge question mark, so I just put a number in so it's accounted for, but
Okay.
obviously that could be very different whether you're purchasing land or trying to reclaim sewer ponds to use for it. So that will be a variable that we'll need to be looking at on actual cost.
Gets us pretty close.
I know when we originally started talking this, it was a larger amount of solar and storage.
Yes.
Looking at this 20 to 30 megawatts, you're looking at roughly 100 acres. Is that correct?
Yes.
And remind me, the sewer ponds for reference, they're 500 and something
400 or
acres.
500, yeah, so
Yeah,
it
okay.
wouldn't be a huge amount.
It wouldn't be all of it, yeah.
And like I said, this is for the next 10 years.
Right.
I think some of those larger numbers, we're looking at longer timeframes, that it
Sure.
would make sense to do more.
To add additional
Yeah,
solar and
additional.
storage.
So if you can scope the project and the substation to accommodate more, so that you have options to add on in the future.
Right,
that's-
which I know
that's
was Mark Montgomery's preference during the discussion.
Yeah.
And then I think it also bears note, the 10th largest utility scale battery right now is in Texas, and it's 36 megawatt hours, 4-hour storage. So, this, I just want to give you an idea of the scale of this project. Logan would certainly be, pioneering the,
So if we double it, we'll make national news, is what you're telling me?
Well, we might
if you're
have,
very interested in that, that you might make national news.
we might have this year. Next year, I don't think so, because
It is.
if it's spent this year, it'll probably be,
Oh, yeah, and the number one is like 3 terawatt hours,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's coming up.
yeah, so it's quickly being deployed. Costs have come down significantly in the last couple of years, so, I mean, you wonder why didn't we talk about this a year ago?
Right.
It's probably because prices were 30% more a year ago. I mean, it's,
Yeah, we don't know what's happening tomorrow
Yeah.
or next
Yeah.
week.
And to be clear, like, I love because this falls within what I like, right? Logan City taking ownership of our needs. We do need to remember for our other goal, right? So we have resources and then into EDAM. This accounts for 30. We get 30% credit for solar because it's on a single axis. And so we would get credit for 10 megawatts for the 30 megawatt system. And I think
and the batteries, like, depending on battery scales, the first little bit of battery you put counts at almost 100%, but the more you put, it gets diluted because you have to provide more energy to cover that capacity. So batteries anywhere from 50% to 95, average is kind of 60, 70%. So, I mean, it definitely helps our capacity a lot adding this, but it doesn't solve the capacity by itself.
Yeah, remember, batteries are storage. They don't generate.
Yeah, but you still get capacity credit for them,
Yep.
which is great.
And remind me, which resources get, there's a couple that get 100% capacity
They're
credit.
like 90-something%.
Yeah, natural gas gets 96.
Natural gas, nuclear, geothermal, coal, all of those.
Most of your renewables are going to be, I mean,
Wind and
your wind
solar
and
are 20 to
hydro.
30%,
They're not
batteries.
generating all the
Sure.
time.
Yeah, and I mean, the distinction is base load, right? Base load is always available. And so that's what gets those higher.
Yep, okay.
Okay, and so,
Question.
oh, yeah.
When does the EDAM requirement start?
Next year,
I
right?
think it's August.
2026,
2026, that's
Oh.
2026.
August 2026.
you have budgeted the cost increase for fiscal year 2026. So I'm not sure exact date, but it's next fiscal
Yeah,
year.
it's the fiscal year, but I think that starts before the calendar year.
So it could be 2026 calendar year.
It's okay.
You don't think you're missed them?
Ernesto, did you hear that?
Yeah.
It's the 2026 fiscal year for UAMPS that those requirements start. We're not clear on exactly when that is. I thought it was like fall of this year, but I'm not exactly sure when that starts.
Okay. Do we only get access to projects through UAMPS?
No. So, you know, like in some of the slides I showed earlier, I think, I can't remember all of them. I think, do you remember, Yuchi? A couple of these I know we were exploring. I think one of these is geothermals and...
The last geothermal is UX, REST is REST project.
Oh yeah, this is outside of
UX project.
Right. Yeah, so we're not bound, I don't know if this is your question, Ernesto, we're not bound by UAMPS to get power through them. We can get whatever, they can help us, and they are a big help, but we are free to, you know, create our own generation. We're free to go out, you know, if we got a good deal on some land in southern Utah, we could go build a geothermal plant there, you know, that would be great. And so,
Yeah, you just have to figure out the transmission and.
yeah.
So UAMPS provides that level of sort of, it's not just us against the world, we're a collective that can do bigger projects more efficiently and jump through all of those hoops, which is why we participate with them.
Yeah, so you don't have to hire 10 people to go work all of this.
Yeah, UAMPS, they provide a lot of benefits to us. They're really good to work with, and they provide our resources. Kind of like what Yuchi was just talking about earlier, about, she was saying, our pool prices were cheaper. UAMPS pools resources together where, and I mean, it's a far cry from the extended day ahead market, but if there's another municipality that owns some resource and is willing to run it for us, we can pay them, and it's all kind of through a UAMPS network. And in fact, when we had difficulty finding power, the community really came together, and we did everything we could for each other to help us meet our resource needs a couple years ago.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is this would be an option to meet the baseload deficit that you're all very much aware, and it's just getting worse in the coming years. I know that there was a couple months ago that the board decided to not participate in the Powell County combined cycle natural gas plant, but that is still an option available to us. Part of it is because they're waiting for a transmission study. And so honestly, we kind of got lucky that was delayed, where we can still participate in this if it's possible. I think you already know my views on this. Natural gas provides really reliable baseload power. We would own our own means of energy production. I know that there were some concerns about the volatility of the natural gas market. You know, the 10-year average on natural gas was $3.22 a decatherm, and one of the advantages of UAMPS is that we do lessons learned. We have a conference once a year, and people will come together and present things that they're doing. We had the Payson City director of their Lights and Power organization. He talked about local generation and how they always purchase their natural gas on the futures market. And the truth behind that is sometimes when you do that, the spot price is a little less and you could be losing money, but it's a hedge, right? And so they didn't pay anywhere near the spikes that we saw last year or 2 years ago because they already had their natural gas purchase. And so we have resources in UAMPS that could teach us how to do these types of things. I know that for this project, and that's for us personally, I know UAMPS would do those. So there really is less volatility in the market than what you see on the headlines, because he was telling us that they were locked in, you know, when the price of natural gas went up to over $100, you know, he was still paying like $5 or $6 a decatherm because he was locked in at that price. These meet EDAM requirements with familiar technology, so we're not, you know, we wouldn't be pushing the forefront of of technology here. This is tried and true. We get 96% credit for anything we subscribe to. And again, this is something that has been done before multiple times, low project development risk. So I understand that, you know, there wasn't an appetite to subscribe to 30 megawatts from the board. There's still enough, you know, I think 15 to 20 megawatts would go far to help bridge our resource adequacy gap. And I know, oh, sorry.
So I just want to ask a question. So you said we'd get a 96% credit.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
So if we have 30 megawatts in a block purchase of natural gas toward the 50 we need for the EDAM.
Yeah.
So if it's natural gas, we get 96% of that 30 megawatt credit.
Yep.
But if it's solar, it's only 30%?
Yes.
If it's the same 30 megawatts?
Yes.
So we have to be in the market for more.
Yeah, you would need 3 times solar approximately, right? A little bit less than 3x the amount of solar to get the same resource adequacy score.
Okay, all right. Thank
Remind
you.
me of the timeline for this project.
So it is in flux right now. That transmission, I can't remember what it was called. You know, I'm still fairly new to this, but there's a meeting of the transmission authorities, let's say, this month. If it gets brought up, then there'll be a time that begins ticking that everything has to be finalized by. So that just hasn't happened yet. So we may have into April, but you know, we may only have like a month or maybe a little bit more. It really just depends on if our project gets brought up and approved.
But then
Actually, my question was more, when would the power be available?
Oh, I'm
Timing
sorry.
of- That's okay.
I
mean, that was also a good
sorry.
answer. That was a follow-up question, but yeah.
Yeah, so I think this is 2029, is that right, Eugene?
29 speaker.
Oh, sorry, 2030. Yeah, 2030.
Which is when Hunter
Oh,
goes
no,
away.
31.
Yeah.
And Hunter goes away in 32.
That's right. Yeah. And so again, so for me, right, I see our resource, I see our base load decreasing, and I say, let's get in the queue and have something ready to replace that right away. You know, you can certainly, if you, you may turn around in 5 years and say, darn, I'm sorry we did that because a better option came along. You know, that's a decision you all will have to make.
So I have a question. I know I just read today that their new data plant that's going in down in West Jordan is going to be drawing like an incredible amount of power for 145,000 homes, like homes, not people.
Right.
So what would you, I mean, I know you probably don't know the answer, but what's going to be the long-term impact for people that are part of UAMPS or people in Logan when all of a sudden this huge power suck is happening? I'm assuming that might be why some of those other projects are not available to us, because
Yeah, they're paying premiums and buying up available power.
Yeah, because they're going to have that base load as well for that.
Yeah, so they're
data center. So
they're doing
that's
the same thing we're doing. They're trying to procure their own power, and so it just adds another entity in the market competing for what's available.
Yep. Yeah, like I know in New York, like last year, Microsoft opened up a big data center and they got approval to restart a nuclear plant just for that, right? I'd love that option. Send us some of that power, right? Does that answer your question?
Well,
so yeah, I mean,
so it's becoming more and more important, I think, to me that we're proactive, because if we wait, there might not be those power options available because other entities like this data bank have completely sucked away.
In the near term, yes. In the long term, some of these entities are also helping push along technologies like small modular reactors.
Okay.
So they might actually speed up
some of that development,
the maturity of those technologies as well. So, in the near term, I think there's going to be a conflict. In the long term, I think all the money they're bringing to some of these areas might actually be beneficial to us because it'll get through those upfront learning curves and get to some better economies of scale.
Yeah, and again, I mean, this is something Tyson and I kind of joked about a little bit, right? Tyson says he's more of a...
Yeah, I'm more of a optimist, not more accepting of risk, thinking that there will be lots of options coming along. And
yeah, and I just see what we have today, and I think I just want to cover my bases. So, you know.
And actually, that's right here.
And it's up to you.
So who should I go to Vegas with?
Tyson.
That'll be more fun.
Yeah, but you might come home poorer.
Well, I mean, the reality is my wife says I'm not allowed to gamble because she thinks once I would enjoy it too much. So I'm trying to stay over on this side.
Once you gamble every day, you know, it's not fun anymore.
Oh.
It's just not fun anymore.
Are you telling us that from experience?
Oh, when you're in business, you gamble every day. You gamble every day. So when we go to Vegas for conferences, people go, "Oh, how much money did you gamble?" It's like, I gamble every day. It's not interesting, you know. So, but you learn what gambles are worth risking.
Sure, yeah, that's an important lesson. Okay, so I did want to point out carbon footprints compared, and like all the numbers in here, I will explain what these numbers mean, okay? But there could be a lot of different numbers associated with every one of these. And just for a frame of reference, because I'm referencing metric tons of CO2, a metric ton of CO2 is approximately what an internal combustion engine gas-powered vehicle produces in 2,500 miles. So driving 2,500 miles would be the equivalent of a metric ton of CO2. So to put that in perspective. So combined cycle natural gas, this is pretty efficient.
Is this per megawatt produced?
No, so this is not. This is a total that I'll explain.
Okay.
So and it's really difficult to compare apples to apples, a 4-hour battery with a plant. And so this is everything assuming running so the combined cycle natural gas plant would be running 4 hours every day in the year at 20 megawatt capacity. So on the next slide, I've got more numbers that I'm not really planning on digging into unless you're really interested in looking at it. And so this is just the metric tons of CO2 produced by running that combined cycle natural gas plant.
For 4 hours at 20 megawatts.
Yeah, and so that's the total over 13.7 years, which is how long you should expect a battery, the battery pack to last, which is 5,000 cycles, 5,000 charge-discharge cycles.
So that's 4 hours every day at 20 megawatts for 13 years.
Yeah, almost 14 years.
Almost 14 years.
Yep.
Okay, 13.7.
And so, and the comparison to lithium-ion batteries, so this, I've got the reference in the next page. It's kind of like an MIT, I tried to go to sources that you'd accept as reasonable. So this is an MIT kind of like public awareness page, but in it they reference it's called a survey, where it's an academic work that actually takes other people's work and summarizes them for you. And so this is...
So is it the same with the peaker? I assume that's peaker.
Oh, sorry, yeah, these two are apples to apples equivalent.
So the
that bottom one's the peaker plant.
Yeah, this is the peaker plant. Oh, I'm sorry, it says peaker. Yeah, that's the peaker plant.
That's our local generation one?
No,
this is the one we just approved.
That is the one that was just approved, yeah.
So, and the batteries, there's like 3 different numbers.
Yep, I'm sorry, and I know this is a lot. I tried to just give numbers to highlight, right?
Okay.
So this is not full life cycle, but this is the production of the lithium-ion batteries. So this is 30 megawatt capacity, 4 hours. So it's 120 megawatt hours of your lithium-ion battery. It only includes the production of it. So
30 megawatts for 4 hours? Is that what you said?
Yeah, you don't do a full discharge on it every cycle.
Yeah,
That's the difference between 20 megawatts. Thank you.
Well, so what I was doing, again, this isn't complete apples to apples, and you can say, well, 30 megawatts, you were a third short there. So this is, I'm kind of weighing options here, right? I didn't think a 30 megawatt natural gas plant was on the table for you anymore. If it is, it's a very simple calculation to increase that number for you. That's not a problem. So I just want to point out, so this is the very low end of the studies of just production. This is the very high end. I thought that this is a reasonable number. And what they say is 77% of lithium-ion batteries in the marketplace today are produced in China, which is the worst place to produce them if you care about your carbon footprint. And so there are things that we could do. If you were very careful about sourcing and all those types of things, you could get your number over to the left-hand side of that range. But my assumption is you'd be paying a premium for that.
Yeah.
Okay, and so anyway, and then the other important thing to point out, and again, if you think, I'm really just trying to give data. If you have any questions, I will clarify. When you look at lithium-ion batteries, this is just to have the battery sitting there in the yard, right? If you are charging it with solar panels, I wouldn't increase this number. A solar panel typically pays for itself in carbon emissions in 1 to 3 years. So to me, that's a rounding error. We don't care about that.
That's return on investment I would take every day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you are charging your solar panels with an efficient natural gas generator, you have to add these numbers in there because that's still carbon emissions of getting the electricity. And in fact, there's efficiency loss, so the number is probably a little bit worse than just adding it in there. If you are charging them with a peaker plant, they get worse. If you're charging with them with coal, it's twice this number.
Yeah. So, which is why we paired them with solar.
Yep, that's
Yeah.
great.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
Are there any questions? If you're...
Yeah, so,
Oh, yeah.
if I'm understanding correctly, you are quoting numbers for the manufacturing of the batteries, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
So what are the numbers for manufacturing all the components of a power plant?
Yeah, and that is a very good question. And I tried to find those numbers, and I'm glad you pointed it out because I meant to point this out. I couldn't find any numbers on the manufacturing process of a natural gas. But again, I would say that I would say that that is a rounding error, just like solar panels are a rounding error in their carbon emissions in production. The carbon emissions of a combined natural gas plant, the majority of them are in the energy production, not in the production of the plant. And versus for a lithium-ion battery, the carbon footprint of them is paid for in the production of it, plus whatever power you use to charge it. Does that answer your question, Ernesto?
Yeah, I'm personally not a big fan of this comparison. I don't know that it helps much to the discourse of the. I understand what helpful information to know. Just don't know that it helps me to make a decision or not.
And that's okay. I think I started out saying that this is not an apples to apples comparison. It's just I think that we have to, if we are concerned about carbon emissions, which we are, we can't go into it assuming that batteries are zero carbon emission. And I mean, even when we were talking about, arbitrage opportunities on the market, that is purely a financial decision. It has nothing to do with carbon. If your arbitrage opportunities, if it's because there's a coal plant that is baseload, that is running overnight and isn't needed elsewhere, and so it's cheap power, that's going to have a pretty big carbon footprint if you're using that to charge batteries. And I'll also point out, Ernesto, there are smaller carbon footprint options for storage than lithium-ion batteries. There's big funding going in now into things like water storage, where you pump water up and then you release it, and that's a battery. There are people looking into lifting up big weights and then lowering them back down as a way to store energy, and even spin flywheels, like just systems that sit and have flywheels on the inside where they get wound up and then released. So if we are truly want to reduce our carbon footprint as much as we possibly can, there are other options.
Just not that you can install next year on solar pumps.
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. And just like
price.
Yeah,
That's the
exactly.
price, yeah.
Can I ask a question on the batteries? And this is kind of one for Drew, if I can.
Sure.
I know the sheet we looked at when we had the meeting, they weren't lithium-ion batteries, they were something else. And I'm not a battery expert.
Lithium iron phosphate, right?
Yeah, they're iron phosphate.
Lithium iron phosphate?
Lithium iron.
Lithium iron.
So
Do we know roughly how that compares to lithium ion?
Yeah, so
I think they're referencing the stats they were giving were lithium iron phosphate.
yeah,
Okay,
so
thank you for that
So
clarification.
again, so I didn't have all the information that they had, but I will just say that the numbers Tyson used in his spreadsheet are actually worse than these numbers. So this 24,000 is 200 kilograms per, 200 tons per megawatt hour, and yours was closer to 250.
yeah. So all of these numbers for everything are included when you see these final emission
Right,
numbers for the
okay,
different
yeah.
scenarios.
Yeah, and this is, you can look at this later if you want. This is just the,
Email some light reading.
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think, just real quick, we should mention here that Mike has been working on a plan to help us look at energy conservation and demand reduction. Because even doing time of use, other programs that could reduce 5% of your peak would make a big difference as well.
Yep.
So we didn't want to forget that this was an important option.
Yeah, and this is actually, I get a lot of education through UAMPS about these types of things. We've had municipalities from Florida, from California, came in and taught their best practices. There's a municipality in Florida who came in and taught about how they gave significant discounts for their utility branded electric vehicle chargers, but with the caveat that they were allowed to make sure they'd be charged in the morning, but move their charging off peak, which would be a huge help. So these are probably not new to you, just we wanted to point out really good options that can also be considered.
One of the items in the guiding principles that we wanted to look at was making this the first thing that we always look at. It's really hard to make up for a kilowatt hour that's never used.
Yeah, that I agree completely. That is the best use of a kilowatt hour, is to not use it.
Yep.
And yeah, so there's a big push towards flattening the curve.
Okay, so
It's a different way. Yeah.
I hate that term.
Yeah, sorry.
okay, I won't go into detail on the slide. This is just all of the assumptions that are going into the numbers on the next slide. So if you have any questions about, did we include the substation? Yes, it's there. 4% interest rate on a bond, money for land. And the numbers also include paying for capacity contracts if we're short capacity. So it's already figuring in the price of capacity if we're short. So that's all taken into account, and the model is using 2023 day-ahead market prices from the market that we are joining. So 2023 wasn't as bad as 2022, but I will say 2024 was a lot better. If every year was like 2024, our best option would be just to buy market power. So I did the year that was kind of in between the two.
Yeah, and I certainly agree with that if you're willing to take the risk of the 2022 year.
Yeah.
So here's, next two slides, just some comparisons between options that you've been presented to help build this capacity. So option number one, no additional capacity. That option is basically, we're going to pay someone else to provide the capacity and we're just going to use market power. Next option is we are only going to do the 30 megawatt solar and 4 hours of storage and no other additional capacity besides that. And this is looking at numbers for 2035 in today's dollars. Third option is doing just the 15 megawatt combined cycle natural gas. And then the last option is doing the solar storage and 10, I think that was,
I was gonna say that 30 megawatts
No.
plus storage plus the 15 megawatts.
yeah, so it's
combined.
30 megawatts of solar and storage plus, it's either 12 or 15 of natural gas.
Okay.
And so you can kind of see your total cost there is not a huge delta between any of the options. Just another frame of reference, every $1 million of price difference is about 2% on wholesale rates. So that can, obviously you have to add other costs to utility customers' prices, but for that base power cost, that's about what $1 million is, raising 2% in wholesale cost.
And I think, I mean, we were talking about this a lot, but if you look at only solar and battery versus only natural gas, yes, solar and battery is a lower carbon footprint.
Yeah. So
how much of a lower carbon footprint versus the reliability that you get from your natural gas?
yeah. So again, it is figuring those prices are figuring in paying 2023 equivalent market prices, which was still an iffy year. So it shows you that even with wild market prices, you can still, using solar and battery, and especially using the new peaker plant, you can help mitigate a lot of those market risks. So there's a lot of hours where we would submit the peaker plant into the capacity market, but then not go in and just buy whatever power was available.
Absolutely.
And it is assuming that whatever market purchases do come with emissions, and it assumes if we're not buying during the excess solar period, that it is fairly carbon intensive power that we're purchasing on the market.
That's all there is.
Next slide. Okay, so I tried to boil it all down, all of your decisions down to one slide.
Whoa! Thanks, Tyson.
So I think a lot of the big questions come down to natural gas. Well, I'll start with, in every scenario, whether you're doing the natural gas or not, solar still makes sense to do the local project. So I'm assuming in this example that we're going to do the solar on any of these options.
30 megawatts.
30 megawatts, preferably 20 here, 10 somewhere else.
Okay.
So the question is always going to come down to, right, what is the trade-off? And I think a lot of it comes down to the discussion we just had of risk tolerance and is a better option going to come along. So what these are looking at is a combination of yes and no on natural gas. Solar is a yes on all of these. And then the other variable is, does geothermal and nuclear become viable by 2035 to 2040? So in this example, you can see that if you do yes on natural gas and geothermal and nuclear don't pan out and they're not available in 10 years or so, then there's your cost and your emissions. If you do the natural gas and geothermal does become available, you can still, so this is assuming that you do the 15 megawatts of natural gas now, and then when geothermal or nuclear becomes available, you fill up the rest of your capacity with geothermal or nuclear. So obviously if you have natural gas, there's an opportunity cost because that's less geothermal or nuclear that you can add. So you can see the numbers there. So you can see that if geothermal and nuclear come out, even if you sign up for the natural gas plant, well, yes, there's a slight increase, a 2% cost increase, but your emissions go down by 1 million tons over 30 years. On the other hand, if you decide, no, we don't want to do the natural gas plant now, we want to hope a better option comes along. That column gives you the trade-off of, well, what happens if the better option comes along, nuclear and geothermal, and what if it doesn't come along? So you can see if it doesn't pan out and you didn't do the natural gas, you're going to have a lot of market purchases, hence the higher cost, and you're going to have the highest emissions out of any scenario. But if you don't do the natural gas and geothermal and nuclear pan out, you have about the same cost as if you had done natural gas and 1 million tons less emissions. So really the question comes down to, do you commit today to the 5.2 million tons of emissions, or do you gamble between 6.5 and 4.3?
You just made that cavern between my 2 feet.
And
In
as long
one
as we don't
side.
know the future. But
Is that considering with the market purchases that they're all non-renewable market purchases?
So it is-
With the 6.5
So it's
million?
using emissions from the market data that during certain hours of the day, they're lower because there's excess solar.
So you're just using market data?
Yeah, and during the night, the emissions are a lot higher.
Yeah, I mean, we have to be, so again, like we always said, these are all numbers, right?
Sure.
Right now, solar gets really cheap in the summer. That may change in the future as more people are adding battery, because just like why we're able to consider battery storage now, because it's cheaper. And so if you have a big solar plant, that they get into places where they have to pay us to take their power in the middle of the day. With batteries getting cheaper, I wouldn't expect that to last, because they would say, why would I pay you versus storing it and then charging someone for it later?
Yeah. So
That's a big shell game.
Exactly, and yes, but good luck.
So I mean, I think this just illustrates why it's been a challenging decision. And, you know, for myself, I'm confident that these technologies are going to work out. So I would be more inclined to say, well, let's shoot for those and shoot for the 4.3 million tons of emissions. But I can also understand the argument of, you know, no, let's hedge our bets and, you know, at least lock in the 5.2 million tons of emissions and try to avoid those higher emission scenarios.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it is trade-offs, it is differences in risk tolerance, in,
And this is assuming geothermal nuclear is online and operating in 10 years, 2035.
10 to 15 years, yeah. Within that window, it doesn't make a huge difference, but sometime within that 10 to 15-year window.
And remind me of where you're going with demand, like, is this assuming what percentage increase in demand?
So
Remind me where you're going.
UAMPS, in their studies, has assumed 1.5%.
Okay,
Talking with UCHI, we increased that to 1.5% for peak load growth and 2.25% for
Okay.
base load growth. So we did increase the load growth numbers there. I looked back at the Siemens report, some of their numbers for like EVs and other stuff, and it's in line with that. So the only thing that would drastically increase the growth here, because I think EVs and heat pumps and stuff will be slow and steady and will fit within this curve. If Logan City doubles in size, then obviously that's a different growth number. But this is based off of what we've been seeing, more growth than UAMPS was assuming. So you could run a scenario and say, well, what does it do if you ran, 4 or 5% growth? But I feel like we've increased it a little bit, and it's a reasonable number to assume for growth.
It also doesn't include big jumps. I know a few years ago, there was a battery manufacturer that wanted to come to Logan that asked for 100 megawatts of power. We weren't able to supply that, right? And I'm not saying anything we're talking about here would have been able to say, yes, we can. But if you're barely staying above water, meeting your own demands, and a business tries to come to Logan to bring us economic growth jobs for our people, how, even if somebody came to us right now and asked for 15 megawatts, what would we be able to do, right? So I like not barely keeping our heads above water. I like having what we need and more to provide for the growth of our communities, the balanced rates for our people, for our customers, both businesses and individuals. And so, yeah, I like looking at the numbers that we have and saying the options in front of us. I would really like to see, you already know that, 15 to 20 megawatts from the natural gas generation. I think that will do far for us in the short to long term. And I would say, when nuclear and geothermal come on, absolutely, add them into the mix. Why do we have to say, yeah, this or that? Why can't we say, let's get everything we can and let's get the best of everything that we can get that is available to us?
And yeah, I think my perspective is that I think those will come on rather quickly in the term of the grand scheme of things. That's still 10 or 15 years, but I think they will. I think that looking through all the day-ahead market stuff, what market prices actually are, what they do to our rates, it's, yes, there's some risk there, but you're talking risk of, plus or minus 10% on your power costs, not plus or minus 100%. So, it is a reasonable risk to take on the market as well. It's not something that, not that there's no risk, but the risk isn't ginormous. But again, I also understand that trade-off there. It's saying, yes, we just lock in, that middle ground emission and know for sure we have that. So I get that, and hopefully gives you guys a lot more questions to ask us.
So you will send us this, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And then just last slide, which is showing if you do demand reduction, natural gas and solar, it covers all your capacity needs out through 2040. But
Then 2040's the,
Mid to late 2030s, right?
yeah, I think 2038 is where it crosses over. So
That's sooner rather than later.
It is soon, because we're going to have, because these things take so long to get online, you're going to need to have this discussion, in another 5 years to talk about what's going on down there.
Yeah.
Because I know we'll spend all night here, I have another question.
So another question for you guys. We just approved, what was it, 20 or 25 for the peaker facility?
yeah, 26, yep.
26 megawatts. And we already had some other natural gas and coal. If we approved more natural gas, to me that feels we're moving away from diversification, which was one of the main messages about this whole thing from the UAM's was it president or CEO? How do you feel about that?
So, Ernesto, I agree with what you're saying. To me, it is the options available to us for baseload power. So remember, we've talked about two very different things in this presentation. Local solar and battery generation is not baseload power. And so that is not an option to cover our baseload power needs. Natural gas, coal, geothermal, those would be baseload power. Hydro, you have options like biofuels and biogases, those types of things. We're not really even looking into those.
I understand the difference between them.
Well, no, so Ernesto, what I'm saying is, these are the options available to us. You saw the slide with all the geothermal on it that we were trying to get involved into. I would love to be involved in those projects. If it's not available to us, there's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah, but yes, you are right. It does, once all those retirements and new natural gas, if you did sign up for the additional 15, it puts you about 65% of your power generation in natural gas. So
yeah, and so what I would say, Ernesto, the argument you're making is that we should buy more coal because, and I wouldn't want to make that argument because it would be a resource diversity which could be available to us. Does that make sense?
or your other option is you use your existing capacity provided by the peaker plant and other plants to participate in the market, and you buy market power to cover your base load until better options come along. So that was all in those trade-offs there. That was all part of the calculations and simulations.
But yeah, even using the base load, even using the peaker.
But the market's more likely to also either be natural gas or coal, or
For
at
now,
this point in
yes.
time, at this point in time.
And that is in the emissions numbers right now. But if the market becomes more clean and people bid more clean resources into the market, that can change as well.
Absolutely.
So, and just to kind of review, this additional power that we would be signing up for would actually not come online until 2030?
You're talking about the natural gas is 2031.
2031. So it would not help us with EDAM requirements until then?
Correct. It does line up with Hunter going offline, so.
Yeah, so remember, we have these two projects, 2028, 2032 coming offline. So really, we are replacing resources that we're losing.
But also the solar and storage could potentially come online much quicker than 2031 because it's local and within our control and you don't have to wait for transmission. So that also helps your EDAM capacity requirements.
Yep.
But it's
only a third.
Yep.
Yes, but it still adds, well, it adds a third from the solar and 60% from the battery. So the solar plus the battery adds about 25 megawatts to our capacity. So it does make a big difference. And our capacity issues are all during peak, during the day, when the solar and battery count. During the night, we have plenty of capacity because of the peaker plants. They're not the most efficient to run at night, but we can cover our capacity to use the market.
Yeah, and I would just say, I mean, you can certainly run it. It wasn't designed to do that. It's cheaper and less efficient if you buy a power plant that's designed to run as base load, which this one is. The peaker plant is designed to ramp up very quickly and ramp down very quickly to meet your peak.
Do you have another question before I ask one, Ernesto?
What was your question, Mike?
Do you have another question? Are you okay if I ask a question? I want to make sure that you...
Not at this time.
Okay, I just didn't want to make sure I wasn't cutting you off. With Sunnyside and Hunter, how confident are we those are... I know it's begun back and forth and back and forth. Whether those are going offline, those dates, close to never, I mean...
So my understanding is that those are very firm dates. They have been getting more difficult to get the resources needed to run those plants. And yeah, I mean, yeah, you're towards the end of your lifetime of the plants anyway, and they've both been extended. But like you said, extended, brought back a little bit, extended a little bit more.
Are those the extended dates, or those the...
I mean, those are the current end-of-life dates that we have.
So were you seeing that there was some article that there was...
I've just seen, a few articles here and there.
Yeah, there was some attempt
the state legislator wants to keep them online as long as possible.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, I mean, is that...
The spring meeting,
right.
UAMPS, where they were kind of...
Yeah. Assuming those stay online longer, do we have to continue purchasing or running them for our resources? If those stay online until 2040.
We don't have to keep running them. In fact, I don't think, we're not running Hunter right now, right?
We are on and off. It's intermittent. Intermittent. It's for when the price is higher, we're running it. And because of the fuel shortage, coal shortage, we have to be very careful using those coal. And you're right, we did hear about extending Hunter's days since this new administration.
Right.
But as any plant goes on, when its age efficiency goes down, actually they have done a comparison between the continuing running Hunter for the next 20 years versus the new generator, combined cycle base load generator. The Hunter costs a lot more. We actually can get you those data, those numbers. I think it's about maybe third for, I think running Hunter is about for next, just for the entire, say, 30 megawatt of Hunter running for the next 20 years. The cost would be more than 300. I think that if I remember right, it's $370 million. Well, the combined cycle is 280-ish. So it's quite a big difference.
Yeah, it's an aging plant. There's more maintenance.
Yes, and not only the cost, but also the emission, the carbon, the coal.
Yeah.
The emissions get worse with age.
Yeah.
Right, coal.
So we have a contract to purchase that amount of power from them, though.
Yeah, so are
Assuming we replaced it with something else nuclear, we don't have to run that and pull that power.
Do we have fixed costs if we don't run it?
There are fixed costs.
We do.
Yeah.
But you could pay the fixed cost to not
Right.
run it and still buy the other power.
Yeah.
Like I said, if it's expensive enough, it might be worth just to pay to not run it.
Yeah.
Exactly, and I mean, we'll point out, right, so these are resources that we count towards our base load. We have had a real trouble getting coal there in the last couple of years, so we haven't been running them at that capacity.
Okay. Thank you. That was a lot.
Sorry, we didn't mean to go that long.
And Teresa just sent us the document.
Yep, thank you,
So,
Teresa.
Thank you, Teresa.
So I really appreciate everything that you've done. We all appreciate it because, as you have said more than once, this is a very complicated decision to make, and it's a very complicated process, and my brain is a little scrambled at the moment. But I do appreciate your commitment to us and to our future and everything. We couldn't do it without you.
Yeah.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Great
Richie,
work.
that's for you too.
Yeah.
That thanks was
Great
for you
work.
too.
And
Okay.
thank you to our other recap
Thank you both.
members sitting in the room.
Yep, absolutely. So, now we're gonna go back to Rich.
Yay.
Yeah. So this is a budget resolution requesting to appropriate $10 million in water reserves and $40 million in the issuance of water bonds for the first dam water tank and water lines project. There's already $20 million appropriated, so this would bring it up to $70 million for the project. Now, we're still very hopeful that we will bring it in under that figure. In fact, it's a little bit of a moving line of what we can afford without a rate increase. And so if the project does ultimately come back in, once we have all the actual bids, and it's at 70 million, we may have to talk to the council before issuing bonds about a water rate increase. However, if we're below that, we're fairly confident that our current rates will support a project somewhere around 65 million.
Any questions? Ernesto, any questions?
No questions.
Okay. Thanks, Rich. This will be a public hearing the next meeting, correct?
Yep.
All
And
right.
Public Works will be ready to answer any questions you have.
We'll move now to the 2025 Public Art Action Plan.
Hold on, what is that?
We get Aaron twice. Aaron times
I
two.
know the
Say my
whole
name,
state-
sorry, I got distracted there for a moment.
Aaron times 2.
Aaron times 2.
So obviously Jeannie doesn't like you because she put you at the front of the workshop.
But you laugh.
No.
Russ
He
go
came in.
early and
It was
Aaron
just
has
like,
to stay late.
Teresa said, it kept getting bigger and bigger and I couldn't move it around anymore.
My brain.
So the last
Teresa's
two
fault.
are.
No, it was on me. When I was communicating with Teresa, we didn't have a workshop on this date, so. There we go. Anyways, I asked her to be moved up because I was going to be here the first meeting in June, so.
Here we go.
So we're gonna,
All right.
do I got the right one? Did you say public art first?
Yes.
All right, public art for those remaining and watching at home. Thanks, council, for letting me workshop this with you. So we put together an action plan. We try to do this annually. I think we missed last year, so we're back doing this. This is really just a report on what we've been up to and what we're working on. So it's pretty straightforward. This is supposed to kind of tie into our public art master plan. Just a reminder, so I help kind of coordinate our public art advisory board who helps move this plan forward. And we've had a lot of great projects the last couple of years. And just the last year, we had 3 great murals go up, a couple in downtown and one at Merlin Olsen. So I just wanted to highlight those other projects in recent years, sculptures at the library, mural at the library,
a few others around town, but I wanted to highlight those three.
Oh, it's really hard to sort of, I was like, what is that one on the left? But it's part of a fish. I look at it every day.
So goals and objectives, I just want to kind of run through what our goals and objectives going into this next year. Cultivating partnerships, this one's kind of been ongoing, but we've had some great success recently. All those murals that we just looked at involved partners. It wasn't just Logan City going it alone. We went with downtown business owners and property owners that helped fund more than half of the cost of those murals. The wildlife mural had excellent assortment of the community partners, and so we want to continue that work. Logan City School District is a good example of one that we haven't collaborated with that we're going to work with, hopefully work with. USU, there's a lot of connections that can be made up to campus. Then art and cultural festivals, make sure that we're staying involved. And then another one that's called out in our art master plan is working with Connect, maybe not necessarily on like bus wraps, they already have their program going, but what can we do at shelters or in public spaces that are kind of in that transition between transit and neighborhoods. So planning for programmable spaces. We've looked at this previously, but we haven't gotten anything kind of off the ground, and that is really sculpture walk, sculpture pads that can be programmed, other public spaces where we can program in public art that's on a rotating basis, those sort of things. Another goal and objective is to work on connecting our projects. So we have some emerging clusters, and we want to make sure that those are connected. So downtown, how do we get folks from downtown to Merlin Olsen to look at the murals here and over there? So it's really just a planning project on how we connect them and looking at those opportunities. Then we have our emerging areas. So we have new trails coming in, under Main Street, under First West. We have these great trails going in, great opportunity for public art. There's some ready walls there, but ones that kind of comes in, we want to bring art as well. Then we have our new park out on the west side of town. I was meeting with Parks and discussing this and how we could program parks and art into that space as well. Then another goal is to continue sort of our neighborhood art initiative. We've had great success with our Art in the Park CDBG grant. That's something we'd want to be pursuing again, looking primarily at Willow Park for the next cycle. You'll see that grant application coming your way with CDBG. Project development, update on the downtown mural grant program is ongoing. We've completed 2 projects. We are looking to make a couple changes to that program and kind of bake it into this. So currently we fund up to $3,000 per grant. We'd like to increase that to go after bigger walls. So the cost of an example, the cost of the mural on the top there was $9,500. The cost of the mural on the bottom was $12,000. So this would help us get to more, covering about half of the cost of a wall. And so I think it would bring more community partners forward, willing to participate in the program. Then another change is to make those calls for artists mandatory in participation in the program. Right now, they can bring their own artists forward, but this would make it so they have to go through a call process, which involves our board to help select art.
So you have artists that are willing to do this, that they can participate.
Yeah, and they currently the owner of the building could just say, this is the artist we're going with. And in this change, we'd say we want to work more collaboratively on the call.
Okay.
Also looking down around Center Street at a performing arts mural. This is something we've been discussing with Cash Arts.
Yeah, I was gonna say with Wendy.
Yep, with Wendy. We're looking at options down there as well. Downtown art display, this is, again, sort of on that programmable space, looking at inventorying our space down there and finding spots where we can put down some pads. This image is from St. George. It has a very robust and 30-year-old program of sculpture in public spaces. They collaborate with local artists. So something along those lines of getting something started here.
That was the one with the giant spider though, right? That we don't want.
The giant spider was sold and new art came in its place.
Somebody bought the giant spider. Wow. Okay.
Just budget, we have some funding that comes through our line item. Right now there's $23,000 in that public art funding. We pursue additional funding. CDBG grant has been utilized for several projects, and we'd be looking to bring that forward again. And then I do have some information. We're not proposing a percent for art. This is more of an FYI on percent for art. This is a funding mechanism that's in our plan, but something that we haven't brought forward in great detail or pursued sort of any sort of ordinance to implement this. But typically these are a percent for art of 1% is Utah's program. They vary. Eagle Mountain has a 0.25%, Salt Lake City has 1.5%. And what they look at is tie that to capital projects. They exempt a lot of utility type projects, but if you're building a new rec center, you put 1% of that towards art. And one of the advantages of a percent for art program is it gets art programming earlier in the budget process. A lot of times, us in the public art program, we come after a facility is built, like, oh, okay, maybe we can work something onto this wall. Getting it earlier will help us plan for that and actually probably have a better product in the end, if that's something that council would like to consider in the future. How it would look in Logan would probably start small. Certain type of buildings would construction projects would have that percent for art. If there was if it wasn't a good location for art, you could roll it into a public art fund. They can fund something somewhere else. So an example here that I just threw together. So if you had a $5 million park, your 1% is $50,000. You commission a sculpture at the entrance of the park. If you're building $1 million maintenance building, but that's not really open to the public, you take your percent for art and you fund it to do a mural along a river trail or something like that. So that's sort of what that is. If you hear me talking about percent for art in the future, that's what it is, and I'm happy to answer any questions about public art action plan at this point.
Anybody have any questions, Ernesto?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
So I know we have a public art meeting on Monday. Are you going to review this?
We reviewed this at our last one.
Meeting? Okay.
Sorry for those that weren't able to make it.
No, I was there.
Okay.
We talked about the percent for art.
Right. So we reviewed it, and like those changes to the program, to the downtown grant program, we discussed at that time. There was no objections to kind of pursuing that.
Okay.
Great.
That's great. I love it. Thank you, Aaron. Wow, that's really good.
Thanks,
There's been some
Aaron.
great projects. I appreciate
Now
it.
you get to talk about itinerant vendors.
Just one exciting topic to the next. Are y'all ready for the next workshop?
Let's do it.
All right. Thank you again for letting me bring this forward.
Before we move away from the public art, though, I just like to say I really appreciated that you had the open houses when murals were completed for the public to come and have like cookies and just have, and sometimes the artist has been available. I think that that's a really important piece of ongoing stuff. So I hope that that continues as more public art is created here in our community. Because
thanks.
I'm glad you mentioned that because it's true. It really does make a difference to be able to speak to the artist and talk to them about their vision and why they chose what they chose to be.
Yeah. And our wildlife mural was really well attended by the community and neighborhood. So it was awesome to see. I ran out of donuts.
Oh, good for you. Good.
Ordered 100 and they were gone like that.
Ran out.
Woohoo.
Dang it.
Sorry, itinerant transient merchant amendment. So I snuck one extra slide in here that wasn't in the original one. I probably should explain what an itinerant transient merchant is. So this is a business at a temporary location, most often in a parking lot. They are issued a license for 180 days at that location. Common examples include food vendors. We've got some in town. Wong's, Carrie Ann's, our Snow Cone Shack. Those are all itinerant merchants. Also produce stands. Then the other ones that are common, Christmas tree lots and fireworks stands. That's sort of what falls under our itinerant merchant. They're a little bit different than mobile food vendors, and I like to make this clarification. Mobile food vendors aren't licensed to a location. They're licensed to operate wherever they can get approval from the landowner, as long as it's not in a residential area, and they need to go home at the end of the day to their commissary location. Sometimes that commissary location is the same as where they're sitting at. It gets a little bit complicated, but there are two different licenses. I just didn't want those to be confused. There's a mobile food vendor, there's an itinerant license. If it plopped down and doesn't move, it's generally an itinerant.
So
I
all
have a
the
question on that. So like a Christmas tree lot, in theory, they could leave their stuff up for 180 days, or is it only while they're actively selling?
Only while they're actively selling. I mean, the license is valid for 180 days, but I think that's if there's no activity, we wouldn't expect a trailer to be sitting there without merchandise being actively sold.
So is that somewhere in our ordinance that if they're not active, like I could see like the fireworks stands stay up, I know like between the 4th and the 24th, but you would, then they close, but I'm just thinking like you wouldn't want someone to feel like, oh, I can just store this here now for 180 days. So if there's
storage is regulated differently in our code, and so I think the active sales is important. In our requirements, it does say that all aspects shall be temporary in nature with no permanent facilities constructed on site. No overnight parking or outdoor storage shall be allowed. So really, if they're using it for storage only and not merchandising, that is not allowed.
okay.
I think I have the same concern, Jamie, though. There's like 4 days they can sell fireworks around holidays, or 5 days, right?
Right.
But they leave everything up for 2 weeks, and they just board it up between. Would they be allowed to do that? Or would they have to take it down for 2 weeks and put it back up?
Those generally can stay up. We haven't enforced on that. Now, I think in a strict reading of that code, if you're just storing, you're in violation. But we have not enforced on, you have to take this down and then put it back up between the 4th and the 24th.
Because they look great when they're just in storage mode, I'll tell you.
Chef's kiss. We did run into some issues, especially on 4th North last year, with too many itinerant merchants, and that's not, this amendment does not address that. But we do have sufficient code to go after when they are overstocked, and we've worked with the planners and how these licenses are reviewed to make sure that we're looking at the parking requirements for itinerant merchants and not overstocking a specific location with itinerant merchants.
Okay, so good, yeah, because obviously we have parking rules for those businesses, so if all of a sudden 20 spots are taken out because they've got those, then the owner of that property is actually kind of almost in violation of what the parking requirements are.
So I won't get to this a bit, but no, there's a really good point, because we had enforcement and conversations with specifically fireworks stands this year saying, okay, it was approved, but we've looked at our code and we're scrutinizing these more closely with our 95% parking requirement. You may not get that spot next year. Please be aware that this 95% parking requirement will be enforced.
Okay, sorry, Chicky, totally out of your presentation, but just.
We like doing that sometimes.
So this amendment is looking at our restriction in the downtown, historic downtown area. That's what it's called out in the code. It's the area between 2nd North and 1st South, 1st East, and 1st West. In that area, itinerant merchants are prohibited unless you have permission from the mayor, which is a very odd piece of code, because we generally don't require mayoral approval for any other license type. It kind of politicizes the licensing process, and so we issued one last year for Wong's, but the direction to staff was, let's look at eliminating that mayoral approval process and putting in something else. So that's what we're bringing forward here to discuss with you all on what that could look like. So a little history here. Back in our time machines of 2017, it seems so long ago now, itinerant merchants were just prohibited in the historic downtown area by code. The 2017 amendment is what placed the current language in there, and that's that under F it says unless otherwise approved by the mayor in writing, then it goes forward and defines that.
Was that the only change when it was amended?
That was pretty much it.
The mayor approval?
There was a little bit of zoning change, but the mayoral approval is what really snuck in there.
So,
Go ahead.
unless otherwise approved by the mayor in writing, an itinerant or transient merchant proposing to operate on private property shall only be permitted in the airport, commercial services, gateway, industrial, mixed use, or town center zoning, which...
So you're eliminating residential and historic, basically.
Unless otherwise approved by the mayor
The
in writing.
historic district is town center.
But that one says that they're not permitted within the historic downtown area. They carve something
below that.
in town center
Oh,
in that
sorry.
next line.
Yeah.
Yeah, so town center is further restricted by that one. Another funny, okay, anyways. So really we're looking at that, what to do with the mayoral approval portion. And the proposal from staff is to remove the mayoral approval portion and to remove the restriction on itinerant merchants operating in the historic district area. Now that would be a change from, previously not allowed 2017, pathway to approval in 2017. Now this would make it, something you could do. The reason for that staff's recommendation is the current regulations that limit where transient merchants can go, itinerant merchants can go, is already restrictive enough to eliminate the vast majority of areas in downtown. And those that would have very narrow parameters that they could even operate. When we look at that, Wong's is kind of the exception because the primary use at that location, it has a low parking requirement, and they actually control all their parking.
And this
without
would be
sharing.
allowed on a city lot.
Most parking is a city lot or has some sort of shared use or is at capacity for use. I mean, it's sort of the magical stone that's keeping the bears away. There's nothing. The code, it's already eliminated by the code.
Also, but they still would be allowed on like a
So
city
we're
lot.
changing
would
it for
only
that-
be private lots.
We're changing it for that corner?
For which corner? For Wong's?
Uh-huh.
Well, we're changing it because I don't think we've seen any negative impacts from Wong's operating. If that's our canary in the coal mine, we haven't had negative feedback from folks from that operating. Also, mobile food vendors are permitted to operate in this area, so they can come in, they can be in the private parking lot, and they can leave at the end of the day. So it's a similar type of use that is already permitted. I know some of the businesses down there will bring in a mobile food vendor for lunch, and then they'll leave. And they're right on the north and south of this area. And they're also, and this is sort of the hedge here, these licenses are good for 180 days. If this isn't working out, it's something that's pretty easily changed. This isn't a grandfathered use, this is a temporary use. We did look at alternatives. One was just to go back to what we had in 2017. We could just strike unless otherwise approved by the mayor. This would require Wong's to find an alternative location. We also looked at creating more rules, adding new restrictions to the type, scale, size of these sort of operations. This was a proposal to, okay, well maybe we don't want the fireworks stand going in there, not that we could even find where a fireworks stand could go in there, but we could say, okay, just itinerant food vendors can go in there, and they need to not take up more than one parking stall, and they need to maintain the minimum parking for the on-site business during that business hours.
It's 200 square feet, one parking stall, essentially.
Essentially, yep. So we could go an alternate like that. So we brainstormed a few alternates. This is sort of where we left it though. Staff still feels that there's sufficient code regulating these, that adding new levels of code wouldn't help much or provide much protection that isn't already there.
So with the
Church isn't let anybody set up in the parking lot there at the tabernacle, so.
You know what's up in your parking
So
lot?
what
I
about
was
the
gonna say, my
lot,
parking
what
lot's
about the
not
lot
big.
on Center that is on the south side where the bank, the drive-in bank was taken down? I know that's privately owned, that one, and then the lot behind the Eccles is
Yes,
also privately owned.
that's also privately owned.
So what impact would the parking restrictions have on the ability for those two parking lots to have something like this in them?
And I know we had an email about
They have to retain 95% of their parking for on-site use. And that's if they're even meeting the minimum standard. A lot of these are underparked per our code and wouldn't even necessarily be eligible.
But, so when Wong's opens, they close the parking lot and put tables and chairs in the parking lot.
They move parking, they take over some of it, not all of it.
They take over all of it. They put barriers on both entrances to the parking lot.
We'll have to talk to them about that. Oops. They can't barrier the entire parking lot.
They barrier the parking lot and put tables and chairs in the whole thing. But then sometimes they have two vendors.
Yeah, a mobile food vendor could show up and then leave at the end of the day.
No, well, I don't know, I leave at the end of the day. So they have a different license.
A mobile food vendor has a different license.
I know what you're saying.
But no, they should not be eliminating all parking on site. So we'll have to look at that with their approval this year.
So I'm just curious about that, because it would be, I mean, the parking lot behind the Eccles, if it's after hours, they still have to have the 95% parking rule?
24/7. We would encourage people who are looking at a alternative parking plan like that. We could work with them to locate
But
them there.
then, if they came and went in the night, they'd be a mobile vendor, not a other vendor. Itinerant vendor.
What works with Wong's is that the trailer itself is tucked up against the side, and so during the day, they're not taking up excessive amounts of parking.
Are they just not open during the day?
They are, but they operate differently. It's more just, you're not going to sit down at their chairs they've set up.
Okay.
They set up a couple.
Yeah, they have kind of that western portion during the day. Yeah, they do expand at night.
So the lot behind the Eccles, they have a shared use agreement, correct, with Eccles at night that for people to park
That
on.
would-
So that
that would
lot
impact.
would impact,
in
okay.
the eligibility. And I trust downtown vendors, downtown merchants and business owners to have downtown in their best interest as well. So I don't think they're trying to muck up parking in downtown.
Okay. Just seems interesting that we have a different thing for itinerant.
So what happened in 2017 that the mayor got permission to allow stuff?
I know.
I don't know, Craig's the mayor, we should allow him to do that.
I went back through, I didn't listen to the recording, but I went to the notes, to the minutes, and there wasn't a lot of details on regarding it.
You just made that up.
It was tucked into a little bit bigger amendment.
Okay. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
Thanks for hanging out with us tonight.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Are there any other considerations this evening? Hearing none? We're done.
Oh. So did you write that one, Craig? The 2017?
Well, good night, everyone.